From Lord of the Rings, the world is changed. I feel it in the water. I feel it in the earth. I smell it in the air. Much that once was is lost, for none now live who remember it. Kind of sums up perhaps the times we're in, and was something we're going to touch on during the course today, if we can recover that which perhaps has been lost.
So for those of you who don't know us, we are two people with a passion for ancient wisdom and the earth. We lead mindful walking weekends, cave and full moon gatherings, and other events at sacred sites. And as Hugh said, we've published 14 books over 28 years.
But it was during these 3 books on the screen that it really came home to us, the value of walking the landscape, of tuning in, of being receptive. A combination of solid research and experiencing the places was now what drove us to write the more recent books. Because we realized eventually that the land held a presence, it held a spirit. The landscape held memories which it wanted to give us. So in Albion Dreamtime, this is a book we spoke about here, I think in 2021, I think. And it was about questing to Albion's natural hunter-gatherer places. Before any megaliths were built, we were gifted chants, songs, poetry, and healing. It seemed to be that the land shared some of its memories with us. How blessed were we?
So this latest new book and this talk summarises our 30 years of exploration around the UK, Europe, and beyond. Plus, we're giving updates of our research and the latest news of some other people's research. So
we're going to dip into the book briefly, but in an hour we can't possibly get through even half of it. So we picked a few key concepts: origins, shamanism, landscape, sky, the fall, and how possibly we might use all this information to heal the earth and hopefully mankind. So origins, somebody once said prehistory is the study of our own consciousness. We're going to start with the Neanderthals. You might be quite surprised about that. The Neanderthals were in Europe between about 300,000 and 30,000 years ago. They are our cousins. Look at these two fellas here. They could walk down the high street. In fact, I swear, being Glastonbury, somebody like this passed me earlier on today, but still. So they are our cousins. But we're realising now how sophisticated the Neanderthals were. They found Neanderthal flutes, 60,000 years old. Neanderthal burials, 100,000 years old, which suggests even then perhaps they had some concept of the afterlife. One a Neanderthal flint in France was modified to resemble a face.
There's evidence of Neanderthal bear cults in Germany, France, and Switzerland. Neanderthal, Homo sapien, and Denisovan genetic hybrids have been found, and 2 to 3% of Neanderthal genome is present today in all non-African modern humans. That's you and me.
Actually, I think the 2 to 3% Neanderthal genome might be considerably higher in some politicians I can think of. But this is an incredible site. We show lots in the book, but the only one we're going to show today is the Brûle-Étoile cave in France. Circles have been formed by taking away stalagmites and carefully placing animal skulls in the vacated areas. This is 136,000 years old, and the site is over 300 meters from the entrance in pitch darkness. And then modern humans rolled up. Yay! They've been in Europe since about 45,000 years ago, although there is a controversy about that, of course. This is during the big freeze of the Ice Age. They were more intelligent, more agile, more creative, more resourceful than their Neanderthal cousins. So as a consequence, they outcompeted them. So the Ice Age, Mesolithic times, this is a time that Sue and I have been particularly interested in, because these people, if you look at these shots, they are us. They're the modern humans. And these people, why we like them so much is that they only took what was needed, no more. And they had this wonderful symbiotic relationship with their land, something we're going to touch on later, perhaps something we need to develop today. And genetic memories of them sleep inside us all, waiting.
In the book, we cite plenty of evidence of spirituality and shamanism prior to the Neolithic, around Europe and worldwide. And as you can see from all these artifacts and artwork, it was all going on.
So we've got a big section in the book about shamanism and shamans, and the one thing that struck us about this is the similarity between shamans, ancient and existing, all across the world today. Perhaps two reasons for this, of course. There's the collective human consciousness, perhaps there's a collective consciousness of the land, which is why similar things are being developed. Here's two reconstructions done by archaeologists. The one on the left is the Bad Durenberg excavation in Germany, and it's Skatholm in Sweden. This shaman, shamanka I should say, he was actually buried in an upright position, a sitting position, on a bed of antlers, both Mesolithic. So several burials have now been acknowledged by archaeologists as being those of shamans. So what is it to be a shaman? What is this concept that goes right through time? They have a close spiritual connection with their landscape and the natural world. They officiate in rites of passage, and particularly strongly, I think, they usually have some otherworldly journeying. They intercede between the spirit world and the tribe. And healing. The shaman's role really is to serve their people. No ego here, just to serve their people in every way they can. And it's not an easy life. You don't become a shaman to have an easy life, that's for sure. And the concept is universal. In the book, you'll see time and time again how similar practices are carried out by people thousands of miles apart from each other. So what do we mean by landscapes of memory, this concept we talk about in the book? The land is imbued with spirit, with consciousness, which holds memories of that which has gone before.
There are special places where the veil to other worlds is thin. And the myths, they're gifted to people, not invented. They always have a home. And sound and resonance, we have found particularly, is a key to open up these spiritual dimensions.
And we have found much evidence to support the above statements in the archaeological record. We have studied the research into Aboriginal people going back to the early colonial explorers, as well as contemporary indigenous people today. So the first thing we want to look at is caves of memory. Really, this was the earliest expression of man's spirituality. People were going into the Ice Age caves around Europe and leaving evidence of their beliefs and their spirituality. I mean, the cave art is well known, of course, and I don't think it's even been surpassed today. Even modern artists go into these Ice Age caves and their jaw drops with wonder. There are 300 painted caves around Europe and beyond. I mean, look at the dates, 40,000 to 10,000 years ago, all this precious artwork was going on. And some of the art is over 1 kilometre from the cave entrance. So they weren't putting the art next to the cave entrance, like happened later on with some rock shelters. They were going into the deep recesses. And why were they doing that? So as I say, in the darkest parts of the cave is where most of the cave art is situated. And archaeologists now, and I totally agree with them, say that these rocks were regarded as membranes to the other world. We see a solid rock today, but actually it's a portal, it's a doorway to the other world. So you can bring the animal spirits through the rock, and of course the shaman's consciousness can travel the other way into the rock. And these would often be, these animals literally would have come alive with flickering torches, and of course under the influence of psychoactive plants. I bet they definitely came alive. All of these images here are between 25,000 and 15,000 years ago. And here's the concept of these falling into the underworld. This horse is actually emerging from a crack. She's emerging from the underworld. These images here, these bears and these lions, are actually about to leap into the darkness of the underworld. And look at this horse, how its face has been augmented by the actual shape of the rock. Again, the horse is about to gallop into the darkness of the underworld. This female form here is about, you see, she's just about to venture into the otherworldly realms. And a lot of images have been found, hand stencils or handprints, and a lot of these have been found in the Ice Age caves to have digits missing. So perhaps this is one of the initiations when you go for a rite of passage. It's also present, the removal of digits is present in indigenous tribes today.
Sacred sound, as I said. Art is often concentrated at the resonant acoustic hotspots, often marked by the painted dots, which Pete is pointing out.
Pete is pointing out.
At these particular places where the dots are, the concentration of the sound of someone drumming or chanting, the echoes often come back like a thundering hooves of the herds of animals.
So there's plenty of evidence of Ice Age shape-shifting. Right back in those cold times, people were already well established in connecting with the animal spirits. And there's lots of evidence of people, paintings of people wearing animal skins and antlers, which of course carries on today, but also we think might depict the actual shape-shifting. Here's a figure found in Germany in the Ice Age with a lion's head. This is the very famous one. One of the sorcerers, Les Trois Frères, is literally half human, half deer. And the shaman here is shapelifting, he's chasing the bull there, not quite sure what that's all about. But you can see coming out of his nose, he's got perhaps a pipe or a nasal flute. So, you know, these are 20, 30,000 years old, absolutely incredible. And this is the famous shape-shifting birdman of Lascaux. We deal with all of these a lot more depth in the book. So going into caves, into the darkness, we can do it today, we do it today, but can you imagine going in there for initiations thousands of years ago, and you soon realize that actually darkness has a deeper level. It's not just simply the absence of light, and these are very powerful places. And I've been in a cave, I've been in West Kennet Longbarrow, when the last torch has gone out, when the last candle has gone out of the night, and you're sitting there in pitch darkness like the shamans of old, and you soon realize actually that you're not alone at all in there. So it's about going beyond your fear. When you go beyond your fears, that's often where the magic lies. So you can imagine this reconstruction here. Oh, hello. It is dark.
Very dark.
Oh, we've lost one of the slides. Well, there we are, the darkness of a cave. Okay.
You can picture it easily.
You can picture it. Okay. So this has continued from prehistoric times right down into modern times through outdoor rock art. This is all around the world, in the Americas, in Africa, in the Aborigines of Australia. And you can see there some figures with horned heads and masks. It's often associated with cracks in the rock. I think Paul Devereux first discovered this years ago. They're often as if they've emerged out of, you know, the membrane we were saying about before, where the creatures are emerging. Look at this one from the Americas, shape-shifting. He's coming out of a rock after his spirit has gone on a spirit journey. And look at these spirits here coming out of a rock crevice in the Aborigine of Australia's. In a lot of the American drawings especially, you get figures that are elongated, like stretched. And this is a common feature that shamans and initiates speak of today. They feel when they're going into an altered state that their body is being stretched. And of course, it's been taken to bits psychically and then reassembled when you pass your test. So this is a very, very famous one. This is from the Canyons National Park in Utah. And look, there's a whole screen there, a whole rock face there, several hundred yards long, of these elongated figures. Look as if they're just merging out of the rock, don't they? Like spectral beings. And again, are they emerging out of that crack that goes along the bottom of the cliff? Rock sites in this area especially are always located, like we said with the cave art, at places of notable echoes. So when you hit a drum or you do a chant, did they see that as the ancestors replying to them? A thing we can only deal with briefly here because of the time is entoptics. There's a phenomenon called entopic patterns, which when somebody goes into a trance, sometimes coming out, they see all these geometric patterns like grids and zigzags and spirals. And we go into this at some length in the book, but it really is universal, this, and more proof of shamanic work. This one, actually, these grids and patterns are from an Ice Age cave at Santander in Spain. But again, the condition, the principle carries on, of course, very famously with the tombs in Ireland. So we'll go on about that a lot more in the book. So our research into caves is ongoing. This is what we wanted to bring up today. We still take people into caves, and we bring most of them out alive, don't we? We try to. So it's about experiencing caves and chamber tombs in different ways. Drumming, chanting, and a lot of people have really wacky experiences in our caves. And it's about letting go, really. Let the darkness consume you. Because then you actually realize in the darkness you might actually find your inner light. So Thor's Cave is a place we spoke of a couple of years ago, this massive cave in Derbyshire. It looks like you're going into the carcass of a dragon, doesn't it, or some giant. Prehistoric remains are found here. It's acoustically resonant, and entoptic patterns were found on some of the prehistoric whistles. So this is the thing we mentioned a few years ago in 2021. We worked out that there's a side entrance, as you can see there, to the cave. And we realized that only around the midsummer sunset, the sun can shine through the side entrance into a side chamber, which only sees the light for a few weeks that time of the year. And right at the end, as you can see, it's literally before the sun disappears, it's shining on this big monolith-type rock outcrop. And look what's happening at the top. This rock is being illuminated, so we thought we've got to come back and have a look at that, clamber up there and have a look at the rock. And when we went back, see, on the left is the scene I've just showed you, but on the right is the same shot, the same scene in 2023 when there was no sun. Where's the rock? Where's the shiny rock? Well, it's actually still there, but now it's in darkness. It's actually the cave wall behind. So look at this. This only happens for a few weeks every year when the sun shines in the cave. And I think thousands of years ago, ancient shamans would have seen that as being very, very magical indeed. So even when you go along to a place and you get a so-called negative result, even that, I think, is a positive result, a positive observation. Okay, again, we've lost the picture here. There's a picture here of me drumming in a very dark cave. In fact, it's so dark, you can't. But actually, that is the darkness of it when, before the flash of the camera went off. So I was in the back cave, which opens up a bigger area than this stage. And after I was drumming for a few moments, I just got on the right drum beat, and then it happened. And I think it's the effects that perhaps happened in the Ice Age caves, is that it was as if I was surrounded by drummers. It wasn't just echoes from one direction. I was totally surrounded by drum beats, and I shut my eyes, and it's as if the ancestors were standing there with me. So, you know, if you want to find out kind of what was happening thousands of years ago, go and do what's known as experiential archaeology today, because the effects are absolutely incredible. It was as if I was surrounded by the very ancestors themselves who were drumming with me.
Yeah, so drumming and chanting actually changes our brainwave patterns and therefore our consciousness. So it was obviously an ancient practice in olden times. And so sound has become a key element of our questing. Perhaps it's tuning us into the land, and we seek to enchant the land. That lovely word, enchant, has actually got the word chant in it. So maybe it is, as I say, the key to opening up the land. The Aborigines do this as they walk their song lines. And they say that walking the song lines and singing at the same time rejuvenates the land, and in turn the land rejuvenates them.
So there's Debbie and Paul, put your hands up. Where are you? Yeah, they are right at the back. They're so modest. There's two other couples that we do. Debbie and Paul are here, and Jay and Louise, and we call us the tribe. And we're going around all these caves and chambered tombs and doing weird, wacky stuff and kind of experiencing and replaying what was going on perhaps there thousands of years ago. The Pueblo Hopi Indians say to reenact is to remember, and I can concur with that. So here we are in King Arthur's cave, and you see the two images on the right. When you tune in, you see these faces are staring back at you, and they're all there. They're not natural. Did the ancients regard them as natural, or presence that proof that there is spirit present? Can you see this little creature here is actually disappearing into the rock, which is a concept that I talked about earlier with the Ice Age cave art. So this is the Heart Cave, a rock shelter quite near there. So we drum, we have a good time, we light a fire, and you really do get effect of the power of the place when you take time to tune in with it. And some of our experiences at these two caves we tell in the book with these wonderful two couples we go around with.
Sometimes we just put down our drums. We might light a fire. We sit in silence. We slip back into the Ice Age. Sometimes we share stories. Sometimes we receive wisdom from the land which holds the memory. It speaks to us.
So you remember earlier on I showed you some pictures of the Ice Age hand prints, hand paintings and hand stencils, and we thought we'd have a go at this. And straight away, you'll see bottom right, we realised how skillful the Ice Age artists are compared to the ones that we did. But I don't think, it doesn't matter. It's the intent that mattered. We used natural pigments such as ochre to make these symbols, and we put them, our handprints, where we knew they'd be washed away during the next rain, because I think that's very important. And the picture on the left is me after I did my print of actually tuning in. And you could just feel the connection between you and what I think is the underworld realms the other way through that rock. So it's a way of drawing the power, but perhaps in ancient times it was a way of projecting your consciousness through the membrane that is the rock to the other worlds. It was a very powerful experience, actually. It took me by surprise. So Avalon's Hole, not far from here. Who's been to Avalon's Hole? Yeah, one lady. Okay. Oh, and we know our tribe have been. And Avalon's Hole, a very rare Mesolithic cemetery, and not far from here. A very resonant place full of sacred sound when you drum. You go down this 45-degree slope. You can see us going down there, but at the bottom you are well rewarded. You can see us doing our thing there, chanting, trying different ways of making sounds, finding resonant hotspots. And there's all these images, these natural calcite images floating on the floor. And also they found some entoptic patterns there, proving that the shamans were there thousands of years ago. And sometimes I get told by spirit to disrobe, which I always take care of. I always make sure I do. And when I did that, actually, the power of the sound from the drummers and the reflections back, literally I could feel my whole body tingling. And perhaps it's an effect I wouldn't have had if I'd have still had my clothes on. So you've got to go with the flow sometimes. And that's what's above us. Look at that.
Isn't that amazing?
6-foot-long natural cave spirit. She's floating above the very area that we're drumming in. Is this one of the reasons that the cemetery was chosen to be in that cave? So Paviland Cave in Gower, some of you might have been there. It's a very famous cave on the South Wales coast. 34,000 years ago, the Red Lady burial took place. And a very special burial, because right next to the skeleton was a complete mammoth skull with tusks. So this obviously had a very special relationship with the burial. One of the archaeologists have said, when he looked at the contents of the burial, he said this was almost certainly the burial of a shaman. That's an archaeologist saying that. Yay! So things are getting there. When we rolled up, bottom left, we knew we had to stop, where you can see there's a vein of quartz going across the outcrop there. And quartz is often spoke of as being a vehicle to enter the otherworldly realms in the indigenous cultures today. So we stopped and, of course, we asked permission to enter. And bottom right, there's me standing in the exact position that the mammoth skull and the Red Lady were found when it was excavated. And I share a lot of wisdom in the book, what was given to me. We were told by Spirit that we must spread this message. So you don't discard a request like that. So 40,000 years ago, people were going into the darkness of caves. And we can do so today. And sometimes it's just about shedding your fears, Because as you say, beyond you shed your fears, that's often where you're allowing the magic to flood in.
We are always walking in the footsteps of our ancestors. But more than that, we stand shoulder to shoulder with them.
So the Dreamtime mythologized landscapes, we've got quite a big section in the book, and we spoke about this before. It's very important and universal, really, to Aboriginal tribes all around the world. Its concept says, really, the earth was created by gods and creator beings, and myths are draped across the land. It's the land that gifts the stories. It is imprinted with memory, and that the dream time is still now. There's no past, present, and future. The dream time is still now, captured in landscape features. One archaeologist once said of Australia, it's not a land mass, it's a story mass to the Australian Aborigines. And the bottom left there is a place called the Devil's Marbles, but the Aborigines regard it as the eggs of the rainbow spirit.
So how are the Dreamtime stories birthed? Simulacra, faces in rocks, sensing the pulse of the earth. Any dowsers out there? They're doing that. Shamanic journeying and ritual. Ancient people would have had contact with the elementals and their ancestors. And natural phenomena give stories of mists and storms. Wisdom from the land can be absorbed via osmosis, subconsciously. It just seeps into our very being.
If you've read about J. Tolkien talking about his work, J.R. Tolkien, after he wrote The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, he's got a very famous quote, because he went round to ancient forests and ancient outcrops all across Europe, absorbing the myths of different cultures. And he said, actually, I always felt I was writing something that was already there. Yeah, so perhaps he was. So a few examples here of many in our books of symbolic landscapes. Look at the one on the left. That's not in the Australian outback. That's on Dartmoor. The speaking crone on Staple Tor. And perhaps when the shaman was there thousands of years ago under the influence of psychoactive plants, we don't include those on our tour as well.
No. Bring your own.
Shame. Perhaps the rock would speak to them. Perhaps the crone did speak. And the one on the right wouldn't look out of place in the Australian outback, and that is on Bear Down Tours. But these weird and wacky features in the granite, will more or less look the same back in Mesolithic times, because the granite, of course, is so hard.
While we were in the north going to Thor's Cave, we went past the Ramshaw Rocks near Leek, and we just had to stop. These hadn't even been on our map to go and see, but they just looked at us. The amazing creature on the right-hand side is about 25 foot tall, and I just thought, well, that's the Buddha on a bad day, isn't it?
Yeah. So we've been had some travels across Europe, of course, being megalithomaniacs, but also to some of the natural sites. This is a place on Sardinia. Here's the view of, you can obviously see a big outcrop on top of the hill. Halfway up the hill is a Christian shrine. We thought, oh, hello, something special has been Christianized here. But it's only when you get to the top of the hill that you realise what is special. Can you see that? It's called Rocchio El Fungo, Mushroom Rock. It was a ritual centre in the Bronze Age. Can you see me there? I'm sitting under the rock there, not showing up too well, but you can see why in a shamanic culture where psychoactive plants were readily being used, why a huge natural rock like that, resembling a huge mushroom, would have taken a lot of their interest. I'd love to see the size of the frying pan that would go in. That's all I can say. More landscape settings, the Praying Hands of Mary, or Finnan's Rock at Glen Lyon in Scotland. Again, landscape setting. In one direction, on the left slide, is you can see Schiehallion, the fairy hill, the home of the hag goddess, the sacred centre of Scotland. And on the right, you can see in the other direction is a very pregnant-shaped hill. So it's often about landscape setting as to why places are held as sacred, whether the sacred site is natural or man-made. Something I spoke about, I think about 10 years ago here, was my book on the Cerne Giant. And I thought, in terms of symbolic landscapes, this is probably still one of the best examples that I know of. You can see on the right, you can see the giant at the end of this very phallic-shaped hill. Look at the shape of Giant Hill. Need I say more? Okay, but on the opposite side of the hill is a hill called Weem Hill, a very pregnant-shaped hill sticking out into the valley. And, I think this is quite incredible because Weem is an obsolete form of the word wem, meaning uterus or womb. How incredible. On one side of the valley you have the phallic-shaped hill with the giant on it, and just south of there you can see the spring is literally ejaculating from the phallic-shaped hill. And on the other side you have a pregnant-shaped hill. And of course they're both aligned with the equinox, sunrise and sunset. There's yin and yang in balance on the landscape. And the Druids spotted this 2,000 years ago. Although they've recently pushed the date of the Cerne Giant back, about another 500 years, I think they've got to go back another 500 years to just before the Romans rolled up, because I found several alignments with Cygnus or Orion. Orion, of course, is the giant, and he's rising 2,000 years ago above the landscape giant. At the same time, Hercules, the giant, is rising above the Cerne Giant, the landscape giant. So, archaeoastronomy can really give us clues in terms of dating something. But, if I've spotted that on the landscape, you can bet your life that the Druid shamans did 2,000 years ago. So how can we journey into these dreamtime symbolic landscapes? Because surely we can. It's about a shift of perception, of consciousness, seeing with ancient eyes, and developing what we call a primal awareness. It's about opening our hearts to the land and its love, and seeing the world as it really is.
Our heart and our senses are our principal means of knowing. We must give respect to this wonderful land we live on. Always ask permission to enter a place of the spirit of the place, the genius loci, and leave behind nothing but your gratitude and love for what doesn't respond to love.
So, of course, when the megalithic culture came along, this concept that rocks hold spirit was brought into the megaliths. Here's just 4 examples from Avebury. I'm sure you can see all the faces on them. And this isn't by coincidence. Terence Meaden did all the early excellent work on this work at Avebury. I'd like to pay credit to him. But you know, it's not coincidence that all these rocks have faces and images on them. You know, when they spotted these stones in the field, you know, just to the east of Avebury, you know, they would have spotted the faces as the stones were lying in the field. So by bringing those stones into the stone circle, you're bringing the spirits into the stone circle too. So it's the same concept.
And the landscape features remained a focus when they built these monuments, just as it had been before, but now they were the focus for the monuments.
Pentre Ifan here you can see clearly has a focus on Carningli, and there are several places, quite a lot of stone circles now, where you can see the shape of the stone mirrors the shape of the background skyline. There's quite a few of these at Castlerig and Swinside. Absolutely incredible. You know, we always say that sacred sites, stone sites, aren't on the landscape, they're held within it, because that was the concept with which they were built. Bottom right is it was found on Bodmin that nearly all the stone circles on Bodmin Moor you can see Row Tor from. That's the ritual centre, and a few others have Brown Willie as the focus. And I found this when I was doing my Dartmoor book. I found that the stone circles on Dartmoor were situated where you can see the most amount of tors from, because those are the primal sacred places. There's where the gods and the ancestors are residing. Here's a great example, just one of many we found at Dartmoor. This is from the Yellowmead Stone Circle, and look what's happening in the distance on the skyline, which hardly anybody notices. A chance alignment of 2 hills. Does that represent the breasts or the horns of the goddess, a concept you see all over the Mediterranean? If you walk a little bit south or north of the stone circle, you lose that alignment, it disappears. The circle has to be where it is. And on the bottom right, you actually see that I found that several of the stone rows on Dartmoor line up with sacred tors.
So when we're on our tours and on our walks, we tell our groups, always pay attention to the landscape setting. Ask yourself, why is the circle here, and what can be seen from it? We went to Greece to see a lot of the sacred sites there, and of course Delphi was one of the top on our list. The most amazing site, high up in the mountains, with the most incredible views. But of course this location is due to the landscape setting. All of these places, we noticed, Delphi in particular, had caves, a rock outcrop, springs, and it was formerly the site of underground fumes that used to come up and causing oracular altered states.
So the famous Apollo Athena line goes through there, very famously mapped by Miller and Broadhurst. But look what's happening as the energies go through the temple. They take a big diversion. Look at that. A big diversion to go to this natural rock called the Rock of the Sibyl or the Seer. And I would suggest that this is the original sacred site, but that was there before any temples were built. It's a natural outcrop, and this, along with the big cave up the hill, were the original sacred sites. But we had to go into the museum, didn't we, Sue, and see the famous Omphalos, the egg stone at Delphi.
This was on the top of our list as well. And we were rushing around the museum. We'd been on the site most of the day, but we were rushing around the museum because it was just about to close. And we desperately wanted to see the Omphalos. We're rushing from one room to the next. Can't find it, we can't find it. And then we hit one doorway, and suddenly it was like the energy of the Omphalos knocked us back, literally. It was such a powerful item in this room. It's incredible.
So we've got a section in the book comparing ley lines, perpetual choirs, I should say lays, actually, not ley lines. Sorry, Lawrence. and song lines and perpetual choirs. What we noticed was top left, that's the Umphala stone at Delphi, but look at it compared to top right. This was made by an Aboriginal elder of all the song lines going across Australia. They look pretty similar, don't they? I would say. And of course, at the bottom is the famous map by Robert Coons, showing how everything on the earth is connected. And the ancients knew this. Everything on the whole planet is connected. And of course, this is why everything's getting pretty screwed up around the planet now. But of course, in another way, the fact that everything is connected can also be our point of power and point of healing.
Another temple on Greece was Eleusis. Amazing, huge temple complex again, but again with several named wells. These are the entrances to the underworld, and of course the myths of Persephone and Demeter. And I love this little quote here from a Hawaiian shaman. He says, "The land is not sacred because the temple is here, but the temple is here because the land is sacred."
So another place, also in Eleusis, this is still Eleusis, yes. In the one corner of Eleusis, there's this rock shelter. Sorry, it doesn't show up too well, this picture here. There's a big rock shelter there. It goes in several feet, and it's called the Plutonium. And according to the ancient myths, it's the entrance to Hades, the entrance to the underworld. The name Eleusis actually means gate or gateway. And I think it's the original sacred site here. The energies of the Apollo line go right through the rock outcrop. Indigenous people globally speak of rock shelters being entrances to the underworld, and I think this was the case at Eleusis.
We dowsed the Apollo line through here, and we then spotted this dragon's head just peering out of the rock wall. Can you see it?
Exactly where the dragon energies were coming through the rock. Amazing. What a coincidence.
Amazing.
But that wasn't all at Eleusis. If you look in one direction, you'll see Mount Kerita. The actual name means horns. So I think these are the breasts and the horns of the goddess, overseeing everything that goes on at the site. We, of course, went up to the Acropolis, probably Greece's most famous site. Nobody can deny the wonder of the temples to Apollo, and Athena especially, of course. The goddess Athena gives Athens its name. But what we were noted as well is how much earlier signs of worship there are there, and that obviously the hill had been sacred thousands of years ago. Look at as the Athenians were building the walls, look how they've purposely left these natural outcrops alone. They haven't smashed them. You know, these rocks are breaking up their nice clean walls, but the hill was held in such respect that these natural outcrops were respected. Bottom left, we found lots of spring sites and fountains around the base of the hill. Clearly they are older than the temples, and there are several caves, as you can see, bottom right. Some of them are shrines. So clearly, this was a sacred place way back in the Mesolithic, long before the Greeks rolled up. We went to Mycenae, very famous. The Lion Gate, of course, is famous for, top right. Now, this is how archaeologists think everything is male, isn't it? Because if you look at the Lion Gate very carefully, you'll see there isn't male genitalia hanging from the lion, and there's no mane. There's no male lion's mane. Those are female lions. But of course we call it the Lioness Gate, all right? But what happens when you come up to that gate, top left, look what's overpowering the whole site. Look what's overseeing the whole site. Triangular hills. Triangular hills. They're all over the place at temple sites around Greece.
Including the Temple of Artemis at Brauron, the bottom left-hand picture there. So again, another beautiful site, also with a spring and a cave, but it's also got this mother mountain overlooking it on one side.
An absolute incredible example is at the chambered tomb at Malaga in Spain. Can you see this? This is the actual entrance to this huge chambered tomb is lined up with the simulacra of a reclining head. Can you all see it? And what happens most spectacularly is that at midsummer, the sun rises out of that head, only when you've got the chambered tomb positioned exactly where it is. So we went all over Menorca, famous, of course, for the T-shaped taula, those megaliths in a T-shape. But we soon noticed something else that nobody else really had commented on, and that there's an earlier history to the megalithic sites on Menorca.
Nearly every one of the sites on Menorca also had caves and springs or wells. These are obviously the sacred site long before the temple was built. And some of these caves were actually incredible for the acoustics. We did lots of chanting.
Okay, we deal with pyramids in the book. We haven't really got much time. I'll just show this one because it was found long ago that cave systems and chambers are often found on under many pyramids around the world. Is this a symbol of the three-tiered cosmos that shamans and indigenous people speak of today? This is the Great Pyramid, of course. So with the three-tiered cosmos, you have the underworld, the Middle Earth, the realm of men, and you have the heavens and the cosmos. So is this the underworld? Is this the realm of men? And of course, these shafts point up to the heavens and the cosmos. On the right is the Pyramid of the Sun at Teotihuacan in Mexico, which was built over a natural lava tube used for rituals. And you can see the plan of the lava tubes below the actual pyramid. And this is found with a lot of Mayan and Aztec sites. There's always something older and more natural accompanying the pyramid building. So one last example of this, we went to Chapel de Gildas in Brittany, which is a natural cave with a spring next to it, and it was Christianized in the 6th century with a chapel. But inside is a lithostone. If you bang that stone with another rock, it goes dong, 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 dong. And we think that lithostone was in the cave long before Christianity rolled up. And can you all see what's above the chapel? Can you all see what's above the chapel? Yeah.
What's in the rock? Can you see the rock?
The dragon.
It's a dragon.
Yeah. And its folded ring actually forms the cave, and it's like got its wing over the chapel. And so again, there's often an indication as to why a Christian site or a later temple, a previous temple, was built at a place. It's often the simulacra. So acoustics of monuments, again in the book, we've got a big section about this. A lot of people have done work on acoustics, several archaeologists, Paul Devereux very famously, I pay credit to them, because of course chambered tombs were the new caves. And somebody once said, without acoustics, archaeology is deaf. And all around the indigenous world, we've got a big section about how sound and drumming is so important to achieving altered states of consciousness in caves. And of course, later on, that was carried on in chambered tombs. Indigenous people have said the drum opens up our consciousness and it helps us journey to the other worlds. Bottom right is a picture of a Sami drum, and there again it shows the three-tiered cosmos. The drum is divided into 3 parts, and you can see people and beings traveling between the worlds. So very famously, of course, the Hal Saflieni Hypogeum in Malta. Anybody been there? Yes, I'm sure a few. Yes, what a place, what a place. Absolutely incredible underground chambers, very acoustically resonant, especially the famous Oracle Room, which possibly has images of entoptics and other effects, perhaps that the sound was forming in the smoke when they were drumming and burning incense. I had the pleasure of going in there in the days when you could hire the whole chamber. We took our group in there a few years ago, and we had about 9 or 10 drummers drumming around the central main chamber. And after a few minutes, we literally had to stop drumming. The power of the place was so incredible. Some of us were getting headaches, and some of us, admittedly, we hadn't had the same preparation that they would have done in ancient times. And I also think later on, when I thought about this, perhaps it's not meant to be drummed in, it's meant to be chanted in, it's meant to be sang in, which is much gentler. But after we finished drumming, because we have to, I captured this nice little orb floating in the exact center of where we had been drumming. So in ancient times, were these things seen as being the presence of the spirits or the ancestors rocking up? And of course, a lot of work has been done on Stonehenge. As you go around Stonehenge, the sound of your drum and the voice will change depending whether you're standing in front of one of these concave edge stones, which reflect the sound back to you, or else whether you're just chanting or drumming through one of the gaps. So there's a lot of evidence to say that Stonehenge really, amongst other things, was a theatre. It's where shamanic performance was taking place. And you can see on the right there, we use sacred sound, flutes, drums, the voice, when we take our people on our weekends on Dartmoor. We find sacred sound is a very important element of all our tours.
It wakes up the land.
So a lot of people have got dizzy in caves and tombs when we've been drumming and chanting. That happens quite a lot.
We were sometimes told to chant before entering a place. And we were gifted a specific chant that the spirit of the place wanted to hear, and it was the only way we could gain entry.
We were told to chant, I was told once to chant between the dolmen, the Whispering Knights, and the Rollright Stone Circle. It was absolutely peeing down that day, but it said, you've got to take this chant from the Whispering Knights to the Stone Circle. So I'm walking through the rain, repeating this chant to my head, and then I take it to the largest stone you might all know of at the Rollrights, and chanted this chant that the Whispering Knights had given me, and a few minutes later the rain stopped.
Yay!
I kid you not. So perhaps I was being rewarded, I don't know, or perhaps even the stones were getting fed up with the rain, I don't know. But clearly some magic happened that day.
We were on a dowsing field trip with a group, and we went into a church. A lot of people didn't like the energy in the church. It didn't feel very comfortable. So they left, and I did some chanting. And within moments, the whole of the energy changed. And even their dowsing proved that the energy had changed. The whole of just with sound. Incredible.
And we've had several examples which we tell in the book where drumming has taken us on journeys to the other world. We're not going to say too much about that now. They're very intimate moments, but very powerful. We've got a section in the book towards the end about sky. Of course, we know other speakers this weekend will mention about the astronomical alignment, some sites, I'm sure. Some very famous ones, the famous Dagger arc there at Chaco Canyon. Of course, it was proven years ago how the Sphinx faces east, and also where the constellation Leo was rising when the Sphinx was built, etc., etc. And so we wanted to do a little section on sky in the book. Göbekli Tepe, we've got to mention that. I'm not going to mention too much about it because I know Hugh is going to do a fabulous talk and some of the others are going to mention it later. But there's some fabulous discoveries now. Göbekli Tepe, Karahan Tepe, Von Kukli, Tala, and Seeberg. They're all Mesolithic. But Sue and I are not surprised. You know, we had been promoting the virtues of Mesolithic people for years, and nobody was interested. It was all Neolithic, Neolithic, Neolithic. So we're so pleased that all of this interest is now coming to the fore. Because we've said for years how spiritual and how sophisticated the Mesolithic hunter-gatherers were. And Göbekli Tepe and other sites are really proving that now. So, because the astronomy was already known in the Mesolithic, thousands of years before the Neolithic monument building, you need to know as a hunter-gatherer, you need to know all the stars, you need to know the seasons, you need to know what's happening. So all of that knowledge was in place when Göbekli Tepe came along. So we'll show you a nice place here that kind of demonstrates that, about the yin and yang. Sorry, this is a bit dark. You've got the yoni of the Earth Mother as you go into the tomb, but there's a 9-foot phallus here. It's the perfect balance of yin and yang. And we show this at several of the temples at Malta. Everybody goes in the front door of the temple through the yoni, but at the back of several of those temples on Malta is a tall phallic stone that hardly anybody comments about. It's all about the balance of yin and yang.
So perhaps in such dark places we seek to illuminate the darker, unexplored areas of ourselves, of our psyche. And also they are portals to the underworld and the other worlds. They're liminal crossing places. So just as caves had been previously, the new caves were now the man-made chambers.
So it's quite ironic, we have a big section in the book called Chambered Tombs, but we actually call them temples of light, because at certain times of the year, of course, the darkness is split by the rays of the sun coming into the chambers. Very famously at Maze Hill, of course, and Newgrange, probably the most famous one that we discuss, but we've also spotted similar phenomena at West Kennet Longbarrow. So we thought we'd show you just one example. At the equinoxes at West Kennet Longbarrow, we see the rays of the solar god penetrating the womb of the Earth Mother. And over the period of about an hour, despite the blocking stone being there, the sun does actually come in and light up several of the chambers. It first shines in from the left and lights up the end chamber, and then it gradually works its way in through to the right. It's quite amazing, and all this happens. And I think the thing that gets me as I'm sitting there and as you're sitting there, we know that thousands of years ago, somebody was sitting in exactly the same place, watching exactly the same scene.
So the ancient people had worked out the astronomy, but not just to mark out the year, but also to experience the magic of those particular moments, that they may act as a trigger to enliven the land, wake it up, and perhaps even to wake up us as well while we're there.
So to sit in the chamber tomb and see the sun come in is truly magical. And of course, at certain times of the year, the moon comes in as well. And in our new book, we've recently witnessed from West Kennet Longborough, of course, the lunar standstill. One of the lunar standstills was this winter, and you've got another crack at it next winter. So that was quite special, because of course that only comes around every 18 or so years. We want to share with you as well something we observed recently called the Silbury Roll. By sheer coincidence, the angle that the sun sets at midsummer it matches the slopes of Silbury Hill. It's probably half a degree off now because, of course, the Earth has done a little wobble since the Neolithic, but we just wanted to share this. So you've got about a week either side of the solstice. If you stand in a particular place in line with the palisade enclosures, you'll get this effect over about an hour. Please go and see it. Wow. Is that coincidence? No. So, and even the site of Silbury Hill itself, it floods every winter. And archaeologists now have said, well, this was an original intention of the site. The tallest prehistoric monument in the whole of Europe. Why hasn't he mentioned the Bosnian pyramids? Come and speak to me at my table. The tallest monument in prehistoric Europe is Silbury Hill. But it was built on the lowest part of the Avebury landscape. And of course, it was meant to flood every winter. And look what happens. In the reflection, you've got the cosmic egg. And the energies, like the Orpheus egg, the energies of the Mary current spiral up there, spiral back down, and go up to West Kennet Longborough. So these are the amniotic, life-giving fluid of the goddess surrounding her primal pregnant tomb every winter.
Tommy.
Not tomb, mound.
Tommy.
So in a section of the book, we talk about the fall. In the last 4,000 years, we had a bit of a falling from grace. Farming spread. Nature now has to be controlled. Land is now somebody's property, which inevitably will always lead to wars. Deforestation, industrialisation, etc. We have information overload today, don't we? All the information we want is at our fingertips. But don't you feel something's wrong? Don't we all feel in this room that something's a little bit broken? Lots of nodding heads. Perhaps we are yearning to get back to a more original way of thinking.
Civilization has clipped the wings of our spirit, and we seek to return to innocence. All of man's aspirations will amount to absolutely nothing if our ailing Great Mother can no longer support us. She will not allow nature to be destroyed, so watch out.
We spend a couple of pages in the book actually debating amongst ourselves, and we're open to take the debate out there. Is man's consciousness actually evolving? There were 3 schools of thought which we discussed. We're happy to show them in the book or discuss them at our table. Is man's consciousness actually evolving, or is it not? So discuss. So there is a paradox with the Neolithic. Nobody can deny the wonder of the Neolithic sites. I mean, you've got to admire places like, Machu Picchu, Callanish, Stonehenge, Avebury. But there is a paradox going on here. Because in the Neolithic, as megalithic building and farming spread,
the harmony between man and nature was ruptured. Our own primal awareness was lost to most people. Population growth was unleashed. People became a lot more settled, but also a lot less healthy.
Which led to the birth of external gods and goddesses, and eventually God. Yay! And why do we even assume that we are at the pinnacle of the hominid tree? We may be like the Neanderthals. Unless we're careful, we might be just at the end of another terminal twig. So what is the point? What is the point of this conference? What is the point of studying lays, megaliths, sacred sites? What is the point of all this? I'm sure there is a point of doing all this wonderful stuff. For us, it's more than attaining knowledge and facts. It's about experiencing these sites, and always was. Tombs were meant to be experienced. Megalith stone circles were originally meant to be experienced. Pyramids were meant to be experienced. Lays and song lines were meant to be walked and sang. And it was once myths that guided us how to live and treat the natural world and each other.
And this can be so again, or else, as Pete said, what's the point?
So we're still falling, unfortunately. We have separated from our mother and have forgotten who we are. Perhaps she is calling her children home again.
We have forgotten what we're for, who we are, and we haven't got a clue where we're going.
Loss of myths results in spiritual, psychological, and physical wastelands.
It's time to wake up. Who's got the alarm on?
Somebody's waking up. He's a little dicky bird. Okay, so healing.
So forge your own personal relationship with the earth, walking the land mindfully with love. Walk the song lines, drum and sing the song lines. Sing your truth out across the land.
Awaken your inner Ice Age Mesolithic shaman, because they're in there. And push beyond your comfort zone. We have found if you just push beyond your comfort zone, that's where the magic lies.
Connecting can just be as simple as just listening, feeling, silently, being receptive. Sometimes simple honouring is just enough. It's all about our intentions.
So the earth and the ancestors are waiting for us to remember that which we have forgotten. But don't panic, because the land has remembered. Let us connect with these landscapes of memory so that we too may remember. So please come and join us on our Dartmoor Mindscapes weekends. We have a few lined up. They won't be ordinary weekends. They are not just tours. They are experiential. And we also got some day walks and full moon gatherings on the moor. Yay! Very magical. So we've got some tickets for our own convention, which we are pushing shamelessly. As I say, Hugh is one of the speakers at this year's convention. And we also have some copies of our Landscapes of Memory book by sheer coincidence here today. We're going to be on the speakers table the next 15 minutes, and then we'll be on our own stall for the rest of the weekend. So we've got a few minutes to spare.
Woo!
And now it's your turn.
You're going to join us.
Lock the door, don't let anybody out.
We're going to do a little chant.
Who's up for a chant?
Who's up for a chant?
Who's up for a chant? Right,
They are still awake,
everybody on your feet, please.
if you can.
Don't let anybody out the door. So, don't block the way. So this is a chant that was gifted to us by Spirit at a sacred site. And because we realise that actually, you know, we all have a bloodline going back to the ancestors. We are all related to the ancestors. But I realise that as well as being a bloodline, this can also be a love line where we can receive the love of the ancestors. But perhaps, because there's no linear time, perhaps the ancestors need our love. Have you ever thought about that? So it's a two-way communication always. So let's sing out to the ancestors. Please join us, because we're not letting you out until you do. Okay. Bloodline, love line, bloodline, love line. Whoa, feel my love, feel my love. Whoa, feel my love, feel my love. Come on. Bloodline, love line, love line, love line. Whoa, feel my love, feel my love. Whoa, feel my love, feel my love. Bloodline, love line, bloodline, love line. Whoa, feel my love, feel my love. Whoa, feel my love, feel my love, feel my love, feel my love. Feel my love, feel my love, feel my love. Thank you.
Thank you.